Well, good morning, Jean. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning to you.
Thank you. You don't know this, and I didn't tell you this, but sometimes I do a little pre-interview or intro, so I will do that to make
Okay.
sure everybody knows uh, where we are with this. But um, I appreciate you jumping on with me. Tavis is out of town last
Yeah, I
week.
saw where Tavis is.
I
That's pretty
know.
cool. I've been there.
Yes.
It's nice.
Yeah. So he's on a cruise last, I don't know, about 6 months ago. He and the same group of people, they took a catamaran down to
Hmm.
the British Virgin Islands and they
Yeah.
actually captained the boat. This time it
Yep.
was a cruise. So, yeah. So, you guys, do y'all travel cruises a lot or how
We've
do you
done
normally
all
do
kinds
it?
of things. When Tavis was in the BVI's, I was able to text him and say, "Yep, I was there in 2013 and 14.
Okay.
We did a catamaran like what they did. My brother-in-law is a captain, so we went with them and another couple, and it's a very fun thing to do."
Yeah, that's a dream of mine. I would like to be able to, I am not skilled at that yet. I guess I could try or I could find someone who is, but the idea of sort of island hopping a little bit and living that life for a week, I think would be
It's
really, really neat.
very fun.
Yeah. At Hebron, one of the band dads that I met, it's super interesting. He lived on a boat on the East Coast. I don't remember where they started out. I want to maybe say they started in the Carolinas somewhere, but they went all up the East Coast and then they went
Uh-huh.
down into the Caribbean. I
Hmm.
think they lived on that boat for close to 2 years or something. So
Yeah,
he
I've heard
lived
of
like
that.
the full time life, which I don't know if I'm up for that, but
I don't know if I could do that either, but it's very fun to be down there and just kind of go from mooring to mooring. You got
yep,
to get into the mooring by about 3 o'clock and hook up and take the dinghy and go in and have a
yep,
good time.
you're good to
It's very
go.
fun.
So, well, I really appreciate you filling in. We'll kind of get into our businesses and kind of what's been going on for you locally and lately and all that. But why don't you give everybody just sort of a brief synopsis? Well, this is sort of a combo. I think you're the first co-host fill-in that we've had for our Friday show that we haven't interviewed. So we'll do a little
Oh,
bit of a combo.
all
So
right.
why don't you just kind of give us the background of, when you got into real estate, what got you into it, sort of what your overall business is, and then we can kind of get into what you're working on now. And I know one of the projects that you're finishing up right now I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with. So yeah, why don't you just give us a little bit of a background on your career?
Okay. So I have a corporate background. I was with IBM for 32 years. I retired in 2007. My role there, well, when you're with a company for 32 years, you do a lot of things. Primarily, it was on the administrative side, business controls, auditing, um, management over those various groups. And then I also taught classes. I did some facilitating for transformational leadership kinds of things when back in the 90s when IBM was going through a change. And so I helped facilitate some of that. And then at the end, my last years before I retired, I was a liaison between our project teams and the customer, and Sprint was my account, my primary account, and traveled once a month up there, met with what's now called supply chain. In those days, it was called accounts payable.
Mm,
And we just, I did a lot of mediating between the project teams and payables, with the bottom line goal was to get IBM paid.
yeah.
That was, so it was, I met a lot with management and on both sides. And a lot of those skills, negotiating type skills, are great skills that I was able to bring into the real estate world.
Yeah.
Um, and then when in 2014, I decided that, I kind of wanted to, my husband and I had bought and sold several properties. We, had properties. I had a condo in Denver, which was my first experience with real estate, which was not very good because I bought that little one bedroom condo in 1983
Wow.
for 65,000. It was 800 square feet, 825 square feet with a detached garage. I bought it for 65,000 in 1983. By 1985, it was worth about 35,000 because that's when the oil crash
Oh
hit up
no.
in Colorado, right? And here too, some. But so my husband and I met and got married in Denver in 1989, and we sold. That was back when FHA was doing the non-qualifying assumable loans. Which, they don't do those anymore because so somebody came in, just assumed my loan, and that was it. When we
Yeah.
walked away from that, my husband said, I know we haven't heard the last of that. Well, sure enough, we got to Dallas. I was here maybe a month, got a call from the Denver County Sheriff and said, did you try to sell this property? Yes. Well, I said, but the guy that was supposed to buy it didn't show up. His girlfriend showed up. He goes, well, that's because I arrested him for passing bad checks.
Oh my
So
gosh.
anyway, so that was my first real estate experience.
Oh
It was
no.
kind of crazy. Anyway, and so fast forward 2014, I decided to get into real estate, to be actually learn a lot more about it. I wanted to really understand more than just what we had experienced. So I got my license in 2015, and it's my second career. I was 62 years old when I started, and it's just been a lot of things. It's been just such a great experience. And being with Keller Williams was the only, I interviewed with several other brokerages, including other Keller Williams offices. But when I interviewed with Dallas Preston Road, I knew that was where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's just been such a great experience. Not only have I grown and learned so much, but my husband and my son have a 31-year-old son, and we've all learned a lot through being able to be part of this whole real estate industry.
Yeah.
And not only did I get to grow my business, I'm a single agent and have been that, ever since. I've capped my first year, and I've been in the top 20%, since then. It's always been a goal of mine to stay in the top 20% because as Dan Harker would put it, the great Dan Harker would say, you want to be with the cool kids. So I have a transaction coordinator, and, what I've been doing more of recently, I would say in the past, my business had been about 60% listings, 40% buyers.
Okay.
This year, I looked at it the other day, it's been 50-50, pretty much half and half.
Okay.
And primarily, I would say at least 95% of my business is referral. Early on, I got a lot of business because I did a lot of open houses. I would go into our office and I'd go to Brad, when he was with Josh DeShong, Brad Johnson, and say, anybody got any open houses I could do this weekend? And that's how, I got a lot of business. And then from there was referrals off of that. And I live in Capel, so we've been here for 30 years, very plugged in through the kids' school and church and some of those things. So I have a lot of business from those places as well. And then referrals out from that have taken me to other parts of Dallas, Fort Worth area, even Fort Worth. So it's been fun to kind of see it sort of spread out. Mm-hmm. And I've really, really enjoyed that part of it, getting to know about other areas in Dallas, Fort Worth, and see the growth in different areas.
Yeah, it's kind of a love-hate with, I guess I did home health for a long time. I always loved when I was real concentrated and everyone I was dealing with was in a 5 square mile area. But there is a really cool aspect of going and exploring new neighborhoods. And like I just went over to a neighborhood to show a house in Garland, and it was the coolest pocket neighborhood, huge old trees, beautiful, just very romantic feeling right now because of all the fall leaves, and they were all custom builds. And so it just felt different. And I just had no idea this place existed. And it was just really, really neat. And we met a neighbor that, it just seemed like this like idyllic neighborhood where, the kids play and this is where we have mom's lunch. And it was like, she was like given the scoop on everything that was going on. It was really funny. She kind of commandeered the second part of my showing, but anyway, so that's a really cool. I didn't know about you and IBM. So you've seen 30 years at IBM that ended in 2007. So you saw a huge difference in personal computing during that time. That was like an enormous change. And so now you're going through what most people would consider to be a pretty big change in real estate. You've had to keep up with a lot of technology, but now with the lawsuits and the contracts and all that stuff, like it's like kudos to you for sort of, putting your head down and saying, yep, I can figure it out. And it's just kind of part of it. That's really neat.
Well, thank you. But having the experience I have in IBM, especially because when I started with them, I was 21,
Wow.
and I remember in the later years saying, one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to be an auditor. Ugh, I don't want to be an auditor. Well, guess what I ended up doing? I was an auditor. But those skills again brought me that I've carried into real estate because auditing contracts and reading through details.
Mm,
I mean, that's what I was trained to do. So
yep.
that doesn't mean I don't make mistakes and miss things, but it's just that was another skill set that folded right into real estate.
Yep. Well, that's why transaction coordinators are really nice too. It's like,
Yes.
I don't know when
Yes.
that trend really took over, but to me, that seems relatively new where there's this just proliferation of, and it's almost, I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that go it alone, but I feel like a lot of people, that's kind of one of their first delegation
Very
tasks,
much.
and it's pretty reasonably
Yeah.
priced. And I know for me, the idea of having someone else look at it and help me, shuffle things around to title has been a huge lifesaver. uh,
Very.
I,
Second set of eyes is what I call it.
I know.
It's always,
Yeah.
it's so good to have that.
Yep.
And just someone to keep you on task when,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I forgot to do those documents. Yeah, I'll do that.
Well, and they help with your customer service. It's another sort of
Yes.
voice from your office reaching out to the buyers and everybody. And it comes across as professional. Like I've really enjoyed working with that. So I don't blame you for working with, even though you seem to have the skill set to probably do very well on contracts. And I've gotten better. I don't know what your setup is, but a few months ago, I went to the double screen. My laptop plugs into these screens and it's like
Oh yeah.
this enormous setup and it's so much bigger. And so I can see all the boxes and things that
Yes.
I miss. And I'm like going back and forth and like, okay, here's what my last time, this contract looked like this. And so I'm just going to match that one over here. And so,
Yep. I do that too.
yeah,
But I have I'm actually looking at you on my laptop, but I also have a big monitor that I
yeah,
use too. That helps a lot for long when you're doing a lot of
yeah.
stuff. But
Well, let's talk about
um,
how I met you through Tavis was, he
mhm.
said, hey, I want you. So Tavis was, I think out and you were having an open house, maybe a broker's open at a flip that you and your husband and son had completed. And he's like, why don't you go by and check it out? I went by there, met you and ended up doing an open house for you. And I was so happy to represent that house because you guys did an awesome job. It was just,
Thank you.
I know it took a while, but it showed. So,
Well, thank
why
you.
don't you, to my understanding, that was your first flip
Yes.
investment. So talk to us about that. What got you, so you've been in the business for a while. Why now? What is this sort of the first of many, or is this kind of like, well, that was nice. I may not do that again for a while. Like talk us through your first flip experience.
It's a great question. Just a little backdrop. We started in 2018 purchasing rental properties.
Okay.
So we have 3 rental properties and then the house that we live in. Plus, we own land in Mississippi where my husband grew up. We have a farm there. Um, but we started with the rental properties in 2018. And then our son came back from college and started working for builders here in the Dallas Fort Worth area and began developing those skills. And, had to deal with COVID and layoffs and, all that. But he had developed those skills and really had hit a place where he wasn't feeling like he wanted to continue doing that. And we had said, we think we want to. My husband and son had come to Tavis's classes and other people's classes at our office about investing and that kind of thing, and kind of decided that we wanted to take the next step, which is try to flip a house. And we approached our son about it and said, would you be willing to, leave, where we're building now and maybe come work with us and let's try it for a year. We said we'd give it a year. And he liked that idea because he kind of, like I said, hit the ceiling of what he was going to learn and he wanted to grow and learn more. So just at that same time, we had some very good friends in whose parents' house that the mom grew up in, friend grew up in, and mom
Was her name Virginia?
Yes,
Yes,
Virginia. You met her.
Yes, I met
Yes.
her.
Yes. Well, Virginia had to move into assisted living. So her daughter, Laura, and son, Mike, we've known for years, and Laura's son is a good friend of our son. So we found out about it, called him and said, "Hey, would you be willing to sell that to us? And here's what we were looking at." We told him about our plan and that this would be our son Matthew's first house. It'd be our first house. Would you be willing to sell it to us? So went back and forth, and they agreed to it. We agreed on a price, and we purchased it and closed at the end of October of last year. So, and I should say, because they were good friends, we gave them time to finish getting their mother's things out. And so that kind of, we owned it, but really we didn't do anything until January.
Yeah.
Because that was the end of October. Wham, we're into Thanksgiving. Wham, we're into Christmas, right?
So finance, just real quick. So sometimes we do deal breakdowns. So on financing, did you guys just pay cash? Did you go to your bank? Okay,
No,
cash.
paid
Makes
cash.
it easy. Okay,
Yeah.
good deal. Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have carrying costs, which sometimes really eat into profit, and but it
Correct.
gives you some flexibility. So that's great.
Correct. I mean, obviously you got time value of money and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But no, we didn't have it wasn't hard money. We didn't have to worry about any of
Good.
that. So, but we did have insurance and taxes and utilities, right?
Yep.
But at any rate, we didn't do anything until it started after the first of the year. So that's January. And we started with foundation work. It was a 1960s house. So very first up front, before we even purchased it, we had the discussion, which was, hey, we are replacing all that plumbing. You need to know that right up front. It's a 1965 house. We're not going to move forward without doing that. We all agreed on that. And the foundation work agreed on that. So those were the two big chunk things.
Yep.
Then I call it the not pretty stuff that we did. And at the same time, my son, this was the other fun thing about this whole thing. He'd never even started he never knew what it was about to get an LLC, right? And my husband took him to the bank to talk about getting a line of credit. So these are all, so not only were we doing something different, we were helping him and teaching him too, which was really enjoyable. So he had to figure out how to get an LLC. And then we took him to the bank, talked to the banker about line of credit. And he got to know that bank manager. He moved his accounts there. So there was all that going on at the same time. Well, when he was building, he was down in the Mansfield area, and the builder took care of all the permits and those kinds of things, right? So we finished the foundation work and the plumbing work. In the meantime, my son said, well, let's just go ahead and start the demo work inside. Well, he starts the demo work inside. Well, guess what happens when the inspector comes to look at the foundation work and plumbing? He looks inside and sees that we've started the demo work and goes, where's your permits? And we went, whoa, we don't have permits. And
this
anyway,
was in Dallas, right? Not Richardson?
Yes.
It's Dallas.
No, it's Dallas.
Okay.
Yep, Dallas. South of 635, east of Marsh. So that put a big time out on everything. And our son had to learn about how to work with the city. Just so happened that at the same time, the city was moving buildings. So half of the department was in one building and half was in another building. And the people were in different places.
And they're not close.
No. And so my son said, well, what do I need to do? He goes down, asks the question. He did what they told him to do. Comes back the next day and they said, oh, sorry, as of today, we only take these online. So you're going to have to submit it online. So we had to go home. I mean, there were multiple iterations of those kinds of things back and forth and trying to find the right person to work with, which building, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
All that to say, we had a 60-day at least delay in getting started on anything. We couldn't do anything else. We were frozen in place. So after that, then he finally got everything done that he needed to get done, and we were able to start rolling. And
well, it looked awesome. I mean, tell me, you remind me, what builders did he? Was it Shattuck or Taylor Morrison?
He started in 2019 with Perry.
And that's right.
Perry Homes, and then
pretty like nice mid-level homes, right?
Yes, and very structured. Perry's apparently the owners of Perry have military background.
Okay,
and they're very big on processes and structure and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and he learned a lot through that.
Yeah,
and but then COVID hit, and they laid a bunch of people off.
Gosh.
April of 2020. Right after everything started shutting down, he got laid off. Then he went to work for a custom builder called Royal Crest Custom Homes out of Fort Worth, because he lived in Fort Worth. And the work that he did with Perry was in Weatherford and Aledo. So he got to know about, learn about those areas. And we did too, because we would go out and see some of the things that he had done. And then when he went to work for Royal Crest Custom Homes, really liked that in the sense that it was creative, not
problem solving.
and
stamped out. Yeah.
Right. And we were with him the first, what's it called? Benching the lot.
Okay.
Where you've got this lot that's been graded and you're taking the blueprints and you're going, okay, where should the house sit?
Oh, okay.
That kind of thing. I believe it's called benching, I think. But anyway, it's where you figure out where the house goes on the lot.
How it's
so
oriented.
That was, So and what's really fun for us to get to follow with him and learn. I mean, I got to learn as much as he was learning. That was great.
So how did he get how did y'all find trades over in Dallas? Because probably not guys over in Aledo wanting to, work over in Dallas.
That's the challenge. So COVID, I call COVID 2021 hit with all the supply constraints.
Mm-hmm.
That custom builder started laying people off too. So he got laid off again. And then he went to work for Highland Homes. And he worked for Highland Homes for a year and a half. That's where, and he was in Mansfield at the M3 ranch down there.
Okay.
And that's where he met a lot of trades also.
Okay.
And those are the trades that he called upon. Nice. Well, that was a little challenging because some of them could only work on the weekends because we were working for Highland during the week, right? Yep. So between what he knew and then those people say, well, I can't, but I know so-and-so, right? And in word of mouth and a lot of that kind of thing. So that's also where he got some of the trades. Also, we have a very good friend who's an interior designer, and she helped us figure out some of the design and layout of the kitchen after we took the walls out, that kind of thing, and colors and hardware, all that. Yeah, she had some awesome. Trades. She had some trades as well. So we, used some of hers.
Well, and I feel like she and Tavis might have the same magazines coming to the house because a lot of the color schemes and the feel actually felt very similar to some of the things that Tavis would do, but with a little bit of a feminine, maybe a feminine touch. For instance, Tavis probably wouldn't do the crystal
door handles.
Not crystal, but you know what I'm saying. It's like kind of the clear looking kind of crystally. So I know y'all did that. One thing I really loved that you did design wise was the contrasting door color. So you had a darker kind of green. Mm-hmm. Everything kind of had this green tone. It wasn't necessarily a mid-century modern house. It was a Fox and Jacobs house, but it did have this mid-century feel. And so you went kind of with a green tone, and you did contrasting doors, which was this really neat custom look and feel. And just when people walk through that house, just they really liked it, complimented the design feel a lot. And y'all structurally did some stuff that was smart. You pushed the hot water heater. You did tankless hot water heater. Then you pushed the air handler from the air handler room up into the attic, which created this pretty big closet in the hallway. You pushed up the ceiling, which is Fox and Jacobs notoriously has very low ceilings in the back of the house. And you push those up. So you just did a lot of things that made it feel a lot more current. Modern is a bad term because it connotes like the white box.
Right, exactly.
Not that modern, but the current feel of house. So I think you did great. But so y'all are about to close on that, right? You're almost done.
I'm almost done. We close on Friday.
Good
everything.
Deal.
We've gotten everything, pretty much done. It was a little challenging getting some of the last appliances in.
Yeah. I remember y'all were waiting for some orders and
we got that Friday. So that'll be installed on Monday. And what's interesting is I call it that onion effect, that you take a layer off and you see something more, and then you take another layer off. Well, it was kind of the same effect finishing this up. You finish what you think is finished and you take another tour around. Oh man, you did caulk the toilet, things like that. And those are all learning things that we all have learned. We called this house from the very beginning our learning house.
Yep.
For all of us, not just our son, but for George and me as well. So our plan is that when we close, then we're going to have Christmas and all of that. But January, we're going to sit down and come up with what our next year plans are.
Awesome.
And we're already talking to another friend whose father and mother had to move out of their home. And and we're hoping that we might be able to get that,
Yeah.
if that works. And the other thing we really would like, our son would like to do, is get either fourplexes or apartment complexes, something along that line.
Yeah.
It's the other thing we've learned from this is that, we asked him, and which makes sense when with his answer, said, people have seen this the house that you've seen, and I've gotten calls from agents saying, I have clients, they love what you did there.
Mm-hmm.
Who was your general contractor?
Yeah.
And how, they want to hire to remodel. Well, my son learned from working with builders, especially the custom builder, but even Highlands at the end. He really prefers to do spec things.
Yep.
So you're not constantly having to follow back up with that owner, what about this, and how, you didn't caulk the toilet, or,
we've
whatever.
talked about that several times. We've had a couple interviews with people that do the building, and almost everyone who's done it from the side of new build, spec build, prefers that to doing custom work for people, just because you have the personalities you're dealing with, and then you have your contractors going into houses that are tracking in mud, or there's noisy,
Right.
like there's just all sorts of things. So I don't blame him on that, but if for some reason that house doesn't work out, I'm sure Tavis would love a look at that. If y'all are like, timing doesn't work out, to buy that up. So maybe Tavis want to flip that out.
Well, I always call Tavis. He's,
Yeah.
He's my one guy, and Bob Green is another one I work with. So
I think I may be going to a Bob house today. Is he doing an open house out in Grapevine today?
I don't. He has a house he built out there right off of Main Street.
Yes,
$1 million something plus.
I think so. I think there's an open house, and I'm going to go check that out today. So anyway, well, good deal. I love that y'all are in that. I think it went well. I think it financially went okay for y'all. So hopefully you come out on the other side and it was a positive experience, and you can kind of regroup, and it's a cool family venture and all that. So, well, why don't we get into a little bit of a market update?
Okay. Yep.
All right. So I pull up, every time we talk about this, I pull up our MLS and check out kind of what's going on. So I always look at the 10-year, Tommy up at the office, he is the stats guy.
Oh,
and
gosh, yes.
Some of his stats don't quite match mine. So I want to have a conversation with him. So like, okay, how do you pull your reports? But how I always pull it, I pull Denton County, Dallas County, Collin County, and then I do a 10-year look back just to kind of see, okay, where are we sort of historically? And so, right now, days on market, everything is, I look at average days on market, not median. And so the average days on market for the entire MLS is 59. Denton County is 59. Dallas is 47. Collins 51. So it's trending up everywhere except for Collin County actually is, for whatever reason, trending down over the last
Frisco
month.
and Prosper is in Collin County, right?
Yeah, Salina. Yeah.
Oh, Salina. Yeah, I'd like to talk about that too.
I know. Yeah, we got that in one of our news stories. So So the average days on market since we've been doing our podcast. I mean, I think when we very first started, it was in the 30s maybe, and so now it's almost doubled since we've been looking at it. Months of supply we also look at, that is trending down. It had crept up to 4.7, and now I'm showing 4.3.
Gosh, I can remember when it was 2.5.
Yeah. So Tavis always says that a 6-month supply is what they consider a balanced market.
Right.
But do you feel that for you, do you still, like, I don't know that it's balance, but buyers definitely have more leverage than it would maybe look like on the stats, a 4.3 months of supply. I mean, it's pretty short of 6 months, but in your opinion, do you feel like buyers have more leverage right now than they have in the last year or so?
Well, that's a good question. And this is the famous, I always say this is always the famous realtor answer, and that is, it depends.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah.
Because yes, in some places you may be right. And others, even in $1 million market, if you've got a product that is, priced right, and it's in a great location, and it's in fabulous condition, you could still get multiple offers. Mm-hmm. I had a buyer. I'm going to close on another property on Friday in a cute little area in North Richland Hills, 480. They were in almost they were getting multiple offers. Yep. So we went in at list. Now, we did ask the seller to pay title and all those other things, but so, again, it depends. It depends. 'Cause real estate's hyper local, right?
Yep.
So even though DFW may read one thing and Coppell may read one thing, North Richland Hills, Garland, like you said, excuse me, it just depends.
Yeah.
And, but what I would say is people's buyers' perspectives, their thought process is that they ought to be able to get a deal, right? Yeah. So I think that's what's out there in discussions when you're at parties or whatever, right?
Yeah. And I have a buyer that's been a little frustrated. They lost out on an offer because it was competitive, and they're at a really competitive price point. And I started sending more listings and encouraging, why don't we find something that's already passed through that initial wave of interest? Mm-hmm. Even if it's 20 days, that we're not really competing. And then you have so much more leverage at that point. When a really hot property comes on and it's cool, and I don't blame you for liking it, but there's other really good properties out there. And so now you could actually get that property, no competition, probably get a little bit of a discount, and the stress level should be a lot less. So we'll see. I'm actually hoping to put an offer in today for them. It's going to be an OpenDoor. Have you ever made offers on an OpenDoor property?
Yes. Well,
it's kind of a pain.
Yes, it is. And the challenge with OpenDoor properties that I always tell my buyers is you really have no history of the property. Mm-mm. That's the challenge. And you really want to make sure that you have a really good inspector.
I've had a hard time just getting information.
Yes.
There's two agents that's technically assigned to it, but both of their numbers go to the national number.
Yes.
And so then I talked to somebody in the call center, and it looks like they were just pulling up the rehab report to tell, it looks like they did some plumbing here. No one really had intimate knowledge of what's going on. So you have to kind of sort of put it out there and put it into the inspection period just to find out more information. And I'm definitely not a fan of it. And I remember running reports at one point where OpenDoor had their days on market was higher than the market.
Yes.
Because I feel like it's such a pain to deal with them.
Well, but even they were longer days on market because they were almost always overpriced.
Yep.
And the condition, especially for the condition.
Yeah.
You walk into an OpenDoor property and they may have slapped some paint on the walls and maybe some new carpet, but other than that, and it was priced way higher than it should.
And I think they changed their remodel vision at one point, and it's a little cheaper. But I do like this house. I'm happy for them. I want it to work. I think it's a decent deal, and I think we could maybe try to get it at a little bit of a better deal, but we'll see. But yeah,
I think it's all about process. Yes, it is. And it's all about setting expectation with your buyers, making sure they understand what kind of property they're buying, especially that you don't have like you said, an intimate understanding of the property, because it's going to be whatever your inspector can find. And so you definitely want to have the additional inspections like a roof and, maybe even an HVAC company come out, that kind of thing do a few extra things during the option period.
Okay. That's a good tip. One thing we've looked at lately, the price decreases over the last 7 days, 3,113, the properties, single family. Well, I don't look at commercial really, but we have 40,000 units from my report. That's one of the numbers at Tommy's is different, but we have 40,000 units on the market and 3,000 and 3,100 price decreases. So there was a time recently where there was over 10% in the 7-day look back, 10% price decreases. So to me, this just says people are getting a little bit better at pricing, and they're more accurate on the front end. So
now, when you say 10%, are you saying 10% of the properties had price decreases, or the average price decrease was 10%?
No, 10% of the properties
price
decreases. Yeah.
Well, I think
overall, I think the one of the things we look at is, what do they call it? Percentage of original price. So the sales price is the percentage of the original price. On average is 98%. That ebbs and flows towards 96% or over 100, depending on how hot the market is. But once people get better at pricing, it seems to sit around 98% a lot.
Well, it has. However, what I would throw out here is that this the change with the buyer agent compensation
Mm.
will change potentially sold prices.
Yeah.
And here, an
Should.
example. Yeah, well, an example. I had a listing in September, and that seller had a really bad experience with a buyer agent years ago and was adamant about not paying any buyer agent compensation.
Wow.
So we set the purchase price, and when I had discussions with buyer agents, I said, they might pay some, but it will depend on the offer. And that's really a lot of the discussions we have right now, right?
Yep.
So the buyer came in with a price, and I said, look, they're not willing to pay any buyer agent compensation. So he said, all right, let me get back to you. He went back to his buyers. They made the decision to pay the compensation outside of the contract. So when you look at the sale price to list price on that property, it's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the new world we're in, which makes it challenging when you're doing comps for either buyer or a listing. And I imagine that appraisers are having challenges with that as well.
Yeah. Because in theory, at a very pure level, if the DOJ gets what they want, everything is appraised roughly 3% higher than it should be because you had the 3% baked in of the sale price, but no one's really doing that math. And so it'll take a while for it to shake out for sure.
And in fact, this last listing was in my neighborhood, and I had discussions with the neighbors because they said, wow, I can't believe that only sold for blah, blah. I go, wait, time out. You need to understand. And I had to go through the whole process. And look, that price was probably 97% of what it would have been had the buyer agent compensation.
Now, I will say I have received probably 5 or 6 calls. I helped someone buy a house in Bedford, and the listing agent put the inputted sale price wrong. They missed a 0. And so I think it was like 515 was the sale price, and she put it as like 51,500. And I've gotten so many calls from an appraiser, from other agents saying, is this right? And I was like, no, I've called her multiple times to try to make the change. I'm sorry, it's throwing off comps. I was like, I wish I was that good of a negotiator, but
really,
I am not. But yeah, it really throws off numbers when people factor those things in. So anyway, all right, well, good deal. Why don't we get into a little bit of news?
Got it.
All right, so I sent you some articles. We don't have to go in depth on all of these. Sometimes we just kind of pick the highlights. This first article, Dallas approves. All these are from the Dallas Morning News for those following at home. Dallas approves a $13.7 million purchase, and it was 13 acres. So it's about $1 million an acre. They said it was under market. This family sold it to the Dallas city of Dallas because they were willing to keep the purpose of the land more recreational and like a park. They're going to name the park after the family. But what's interesting to me about this is I've driven by this place a lot. This is on Coit near Frankfurt and George Bush. And it's this kind of dilapidated adventure landing. It's this sort of depressing putt-putt and go-kart place I've passed over and over thinking, who in the world goes there? And I guess it's still open. And now the city of Dallas is about to own it. And they may turn it into a park. They did hint that they may keep it around. So are you familiar with where that is?
Well, I looked it up.
Okay.
No, I've traveled that area. Right now, that whole area is under construction.
I know.
It's no fun to go that way. And it's not that far from UT Dallas.
Right.
So I could see where, it might, be able to be used in that way.
Yep.
With that, all the growth that's going on there, but
yeah,
I'm not familiar with it, but I have driven past it.
Yeah, it's a weird corner, and I don't know what these baseball fields are talking about. It's 13 acres, but I do know Adventure Landing, and that's why I thought, man, I'm glad it's going to get some sort of life breathed into it, but also the idea of the city of Dallas, owning an amusement park, kind of a cheap little amusement park. So I don't know if they're going to bulldoze it and make it, pickleball courts or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The next article is, I heard about this on the radio, so I had to go look it up. McKinney, this whole corner up at 121 and 75 and the tollway, McKinney plans to they're in the news twice, but they're planning a $200 million surf park. So it's a 35 acre at Stacy Road in 121, $200 million property, a project. And it's a surf. I guess it's sort of like a pool. You can learn to surf,
Yeah.
skateboard park, all sorts of randomness, but it sounds pretty amazing.
Stacy in 121 is not that far from that Allen, um,
The outlets.
the outlets, right?
Yep. The outlets are
Yeah.
on Stacy over on 75. So
75,
you have
yeah.
Stacy cuts through from 75 to 121, so
Right.
a diagonal cut.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think on the other side, on the tollway side, is where this is going to go. But when you take into account the fire pit concert venue they're doing over there, I don't know if you're familiar with that. I want to say that's $80 million or something. They're putting in this crazy. I think Troy Aikman must have something to do with it because he's doing all the ads for them. But this big concert venue is going in right in that area over in McKinney, and they're doing this. Plus, a little bit north of this on 380 is the new Universal. You've got the PGA.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
a lot happening up there.
Oh my gosh! In 10 years, that area. I mean, Arlington and all that is the radio station I listen to. The Ticket, it calls it Arlington, the city of bits, because they just they do have a lot of bits. They try, the Six Flags and the Hurricane Harbor and all
Ranger Stadium,
the Rangers,
and
yeah. But McKinney in that area they're throwing a lot of money to try to get travelers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is not going to be just for local people. People are going to actually vacation here to try to experience some of this stuff. So.
Well, and that makes sense when the other one you sent was about the airport.
I know. Yeah. So that's huge news because we had talked about this a couple of weeks ago that there is a push in McKinney. Some of the citizens don't want commercial traffic. I guess they already have like FedEx. They have some of the runways are big enough to do sort of your Amazon and FedEx planes. But the city of McKinney is putting money into expanding the runways and property for their airport. And I don't know if it's Spirit, but they kind of hint that it's like a Frontier Spirit type airline.
I don't think, didn't Spirit file bankruptcy?
Did they? I don't know.
Recently. Yeah, but it'll be a smaller airline like that.
Smaller airline.
Maybe even.
Yeah. But the idea that you can go and book a flight from there to Denver or whatever.
Yeah.
We've talked about how that Sherman, Denison, South Oklahoma, Texoma, of course, you still have like Princeton, Greenville, all that. All those people would much rather fly out of a McKinney airport than
have to drive all the way to DFW.
Heck yeah.
Or even Love Field. Well, and you've got Bodark going on up there too.
Yeah. Have you ever been up there? I
have not. I have not, but I've read about it and talked to people about it. Especially, I have a very good friend who's in charge of all the water for the city of Irving. So we've had discussions around that water and how would that flow, Lake Lavon, all that kind of thing. So
yeah, the newest lake in Texas, they flooded at Lake Bodark, and it's northeast-ish, I think, of the DFW area. And then Texoma, of course, has, I think, $5 billion worth of development going in from different casino-based companies, Hard Rock, and then I think Choctaw is there. So that all hints that gambling will be legal in the next 10 years, I'm sure.
Well, and Mark Cuban has, that's his big interest too.
Yeah. He sold the Mavericks to the family that owned the Adelson family that owns the Venetian, I think, and several properties there in Vegas. Yeah, so I think the writing's on the wall for gambling. Y'all go to Mississippi a good bit, so you get the joys of driving through Bossier. I mean,
well, if we're usually in the north part, but this time around we may end up south. But Vicksburg has on I-20 there.
Oh, that's right. Vicksburg
they have
has them too,
but it's on a boat. So when back in the day, my mother-in-law would come from there, and she'd be later than we expected. This before cell phones, and we'd say, "Well, what happened? You're late." Well, I had to stop in Vicksburg and pull a few, is how she would say it. That's when they had the 1 hour. Yeah, go to the boat.
Yep.
That's exactly. Stop at the boat.
Yeah, it's Louisiana has, they've got odd laws, but we lived over there in Monroe for 10 years ish. But they're okay with gambling, but for whatever reason, it has to technically all the casino floors.
Has
the
to be
hotel can
water.
Be on land, but they have this little bridge that goes out onto the river.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's okay. And it's just, it's really bizarre. And those are depressing over there to me because they still allow smoking in there, and it's just
Yeah.
this cloud of smoke and just people on oxygen machines pulling, pulling
And they're sitting
slot
there puffing
machines,
away
and
doing their
good
thing.
grief.
I
Oh
know, it's
man.
crazy.
Yeah. We would go over there every once in a while. It was never like a huge thing for me, but last news story we'll touch on. We mentioned it earlier, but up in Collin County. So it's been named one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And this is Salina.
Yeah.
Have you sold or helped anyone purchase anything up in the Salina area?
I have not, but I have been there. As you know, we recently bought a Mercedes Sprinter, and our maiden voyage was to Salina, to the Eden Valley, I think it's called Eden Valley, winery.
Okay.
So there are some wineries up there.
Wow.
Who would have thought? But we did drive through that area, and we had breakfast in downtown Salina, which isn't very big right now.
Yeah.
But when I read this, I thought that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's so far north. It's kind of misleading because there's a part of you that almost equates Salina and Prosper to like a Princeton or an old Little Elm, where it's like, well, if I go a little further out, I can get something a little cheaper. And it is just not playing out that way. I mean, Prosper, I'm sure there's some reasonable things up there, but they are going a little higher end in a lot of those neighborhoods. And like this article said, price range starting in the 600s, reaching to $1 million.
Yeah.
This is going to be 450 homes for Perry Homes, which we talked about.
Yep.
Perry is doing the bulk of it. Shattuck and Grand, all upper mid-level, kind of nice homes, not custom, kind of semi-custom, I'm sure they would call it, but starting in the 600s to $1 million, which I guess is becoming more ubiquitous, and the average price where we live now is 550, 600 probably. But you think, well, if I drive 45 minutes north, I should be able to get some land or something reasonable. It's like, no, it's just the same. It's going to be.
I was shocked just for all this mileage you could see was land that had all these signs, like a Perry home and where they're building. And one of the spots that we went through to get to this winery, there's a little bit of undulation in the land up there, and it has a little bit of a raise enough so you're looking out. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
But that over the years, those are going to be at some point sold off to builders. But beautiful, some really nice views.
Yeah.
Has just enough little.
I've been to Prosper. I don't think I've had a reason to go all the way up to Salina that I can remember. But yeah, it's interesting. And the more development goes up there, and then you get your HEBs and your Home Depots and kind of make it, then there's not as much of a reason. But man, by the time you live up there, if you want to go to a Mavericks game or something, I mean, you're
stay all night.
20, might as well get a hotel.
Exactly.
But I guess if they end up getting a casino downtown, then man, they'll make a night of it, and they'll go down there.
That's right.
And figure that out. So
that's right.
Well, good deal. So did any of the other news stories pop out at you? Did you want to say?
No. Not really. I will say that whole the urban village project in Frisco. I looked that up. Gosh, I was shocked at that. And I mean, all that whole Collin County corridor is just exploding.
It's funny. I guess it was lost on me that Dallas didn't have a Bloomingdale's or there's
I saw that
first in the region restaurant. Like a lot of these like first in the region stores and restaurants are going to be going up in there. But yeah, that whole PGA. Have you spent time up there? I went to a presentation from the mayor where they talked about all the different enclaves and the custom homes. And I know they came to our office one time and some of those builders talked a little bit.
Who was Britain and some of those came in.
Yeah, they're offering good incentives for agents to build out there. But have you actually driven up there to? I have
not. I've driven, like I said, when we went to Salina.
Yeah, and you should go up there. You should go see the PGA stuff. There's the Omni there is beautiful, and so some nice restaurants and stuff. So yeah, y'all should go just grab lunch at the Omni, see all the PGA stuff. It's crazy. I mean, just the amount of bulldozers and cranes and all that stuff.
I know. Well, we thought when the star went in, right? We thought, wow, that is something. And now the PGA thing is kind of overshadowing that.
I think we're getting spoiled because you go to other, like you drive from here to Mississippi and you drive through towns who haven't changed in 30 years.
Yes.
You know,
or
like
longer.
it's big time if they renovate the Circle K on the corner, you know.
Yeah. Or the General Dollar.
Yeah. Like that's
Dollar General, whatever it's called.
Can you even believe it? You know, I remember we go hunting up near Amarillo and there's a town, Childress. Childress is, I don't know, whatever, 11,000 people, something like that. Well, I remember that Childress is getting a Starbucks. I thought that was like the biggest thing that like, it's like crazy, you know?
I remember when Laurel, Mississippi, which, you know, that show called Hometown. I don't know if you know that show. It's on
I've heard
HGTV.
of it. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
It's Mississippi's version of Chip and Joanna.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Both of that husband and wife, they went to Ole Miss, which is where my son went.
Okay.
And anyway, Laurel is the town. It's about 25 minutes, maybe 20 minutes from our farm in Mississippi. And same kind of thing. When we were first going there 35 years ago, it was just the Walmart and Lowe's. That was it. Right.
Yep.
And maybe a Kroger. Now, Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, Cane's, because
big time.
Yeah. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yep. All right. Well, speaking of farms, our last segment that we like to do, and this is, I wanted to get your input because Tavis and I have kind of both talked about what our dream properties are and our dream vacations and stuff like that. But I found a house or property out in Mineral Wells. So it's 291 Bennett Road in Mineral Wells. For those of you, I will put a link in the show notes, but this is a 580 acre property for sale for $19 million. But beautiful, by the way. They have horse barns.
Fabulous.
Incredible. So I definitely want to talk about this house. I know you looked at it. It's gorgeous. It's just sort of this modern farm mansion, really.
I think you should buy it, and you could rent it out as venues for weddings and other things.
Yeah, you could do like a nice short-term. Yeah, weddings. You know, your weekly rental for weddings might be a little high, but from a builder's perspective, the island in this house, the kitchen island, that cannot be one piece of stone. It has to be some sort of wrapped thing, but it looks like it's 3 or 4 inches thick. It looks like it weighs 8,000 pounds, but man, I love that. I love the stone in the kitchen. The aesthetic is just really, really neat.
I love all the openness, that all those back doors. They probably slide. I would hope they would maybe be sliders, but either way, you got such a great view off of that living area. Yeah, it does, like you talked earlier, has some elevation. You can see for a while out there. So I'm not putting a bid on this anytime soon, but what is your? I know y'all have some property out in Mississippi, but let's give you a decent budget where maybe a handful of $1 million. You could kind of get what you wanted. Are you going ocean? Are you going lake, mountains? Are you getting a bigger farm? What are you doing? I'm going Seaside area. I love that area down there. Last year, for my 70th birthday, George rented a house there.
Nice.
And all the houses there have names. And the one that he rented for us, for our family, is called Outside the Box.
Okay.
Cool house. And, they're kind of stacked there. And when we walked, there were a couple of them down from there that when I asked, how many bedrooms and what, anyway, there were at least probably 14, 15 million, those. Now, the one we were staying in was not. It probably is maybe, probably 5, maybe, something like that. But it's right on the water. And that's my dream. I love being on the water.
Yeah.
And so I like to be able to just walk out and take a walk on the beach and come back and that kind of thing. So that would be my dream.
That's awesome. I don't know that you may not know this about me, but I went to Pepperdine, which is, it's been in the news this week because there's fires there.
Yeah.
It's in Malibu. And one of the things I did enjoy, but I regret not enjoying more, was being in Malibu and on Malibu Beach and Zuma Beach and all these amazing, like, world-class beaches, and not spending more time down there. Cause I very much enjoy it. And actually, somewhere on my desk, I have a rock that from my very first visit to the beach, I picked up a rock and I kept it. And it's like in my little keepsake box or whatever. But I very much enjoy the ocean. From a logistical standpoint, you've got the salt water definitely will kill your dreams, and you got your hurricanes every once in a while.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it
it's
is.
like anything, like if you have a lake house or a farm or anything, there's that whole element of, and I've talked to they have that boat out on Lake Louisville, and we have some friends that have a lake house on Inks. There's a certain level of, wealth. I'm not, that affords you some luxuries, a boat,
Yes.
lake house, whatever.
Yes.
The next level of wealth is being able to hire somebody to just take care of it, and it's ready for you when you show up. Because most people I know, they still have to go early and unzip the stuff, and they got to clean this and prep this and all that. And it's fun, but like you got to kind of factor in a half day or a day of work, every time you want to go enjoy these things. So the next level is sort of like, okay, where can I get to the point where I can just sort of call up my guy and say, hey, we're going to the lake house this weekend. Can it be ready for us? So
exactly. We had 2 condos in Clearwater Beach for about 8 years. And one of them was strictly rental. And the other one was ones that we came to. And we had someone, a realtor actually down there who we could say, we're coming. Can
That's
you
awesome.
double check things? But
that's probably
a condo is simple.
Condo, but it's probably a nice little niche business. I guess Tavis has said someone tried to start that business out on Lake Louisville for boats, and it just, where they would come prep everything, prep your dock and get your boat all gassed up, ready to go. And it just didn't take off. But I know they're expanding out there. So maybe there'll be enough boats in the next couple of years where there'll be enough people who want to do that. So you could kind of have someone that's local that's like, okay, this is pretty easy, pretty reasonable, to get someone to go do that. But this property out in Mineral Wells, I've never spent a ton of time, but time after time, when I search for the most expensive properties in DFW, Mineral Wells pops up. So there is a level of well-to-do out there that I'm not aware of.
Probably some oil money.
Probably oil money. Yeah. Oil money that likes horses. And, if you ever in the future, if you're looking through properties and you see a property out in the country and it has a go-kart track, you will know that I have hit it big and I bought a property somewhere.
I love it. That's awesome.
That's what I would be putting a track around this whole thing and just riding go-karts and 4-wheelers around. So, well, Jean, thank you so much for joining me today and filling in for Tavis and going through this. You did great. Thank you. I appreciate your story and your mentorship for me, letting me, come in and, doing the open house and, helping me out. And, so I definitely, you talk about Keller Williams and DPR. We've talked about it several times that the family there, the people that they've attracted is just, I've really enjoyed it, getting to know the different little nooks and crannies of different businesses and people there. And it's really great. And you were a part of that. And I very, very much appreciate it. So,
well, thank you, Ashton. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, and Merry Christmas to you and your family and everyone listening.
So before we log off, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, if they hear your voice, they hear your energy, and they say, this is my person, how would they get in touch with you? Where would you want to send them? Phone number, email, website? You give them your socials or whatever, and then I will remind them of ours, and we'll log off there.
All right. Well, my email is simple. It's Jean@ainsworthteam.com. My last name, ainsworthteam.com, and my phone number is 972-898-4480. Doesn't that sound like a car sales? 898-4480.
Yeah, you could sell cars in Mineral Wells.
There you go. Yeah.
So if you haven't yet, find us on Spotify, Apple, whatever. Subscribe so you can be notified every time our podcast pops up. Find us on Instagram. I'm the Dallas Real Estate Guy. Tavis Westbrook. He has Tavis Westbrook Designs. Find us somewhere, latch on, ask questions. We'd love to connect outside of the podcast for lunch or whatever to answer any questions you have, get your ideas. But until next time, have a great day.
Thank you.